Our next speaker is Derek Sears. That is not the right talk.
Oh, there we are. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for staying to the end of the meeting, or the last afternoon of the meeting. A group of us have been interested in a volcanic site in Idaho, which has long been regarded as a planetary analog site. The astronauts were trained there in the 60s. With the idea of developing exploration techniques and of generally seeing what we can learn about the solar system objects by studying this terrestrial location. And I was charged by Jen Haldeman and the others who were organizing this project to see if we can't learn something about asteroids from exploring these volcanic terrains. Now, I must admit a self-interest here. I've been fascinated by these sudden outbursts of volcanism in the middle of the prairies and, you know, in the United States for as long as I've been in the United States, which is like 1979 or something. So I was keen to get involved, but the challenge of saying, well, can we learn things about asteroids by looking at a volcanic site on Earth? That was a real challenge. So I've had some fun over the last 4 or 5 years, and we've had a couple of cracks at it. And I think I may have actually come up with something which is scientifically meaningful. So hopefully I'm not going to waste the next 15 minutes of your lives. Here are my colleagues. Alex helped me out by working on the asteroid Eros as the analog. Scott Hughes is our field geologist. He spent most of his career familiarizing himself with this location. And then Shannon is one of the local experts on the site that is particularly interested in these the mechanics of ejection of ejector blocks at the site. So what I'm talking about is what I think we can get insights into the internal structure of a near-Earth asteroid Eros by looking at the ejector blocks on the asteroid and at Kings Bowl crater in Idaho. Who do I point this at? Nothing's happening anyway. Have I got another button? There's another one here.
Try that one. Let me take that away.
Well, that's the one she showed me how to use.
I know.
There we go.
But this is a normal one.
I got you. Okay. So yeah, here's a couple of just orientation slides, which didn't work out quite perfectly, but we have Eros up here, beautiful asteroid, second largest near-Earth asteroid, as you're all very familiar with. Banana shape, flattened banana shape. We think this is because of an impact that cracked the asteroid there. The craters the whole asteroid has been studied intensely because near Shoemaker spacecraft orbited it for a year. We got images of craters, and we got images of boulders. So here are a number of it. This is from a paper by Thomas in 2001, and we can see the boulders are not only very numerous, but they're also very diverse in their properties. A lot of different morphologies. Here is the crater Kings Bowl, sitting on the Kings Bowl lava field. Here, there's the Great East Rift is down. It's really running north-south pretty much. And then lava flowed out of this fissure, filled up a lake, filled up a cavity to make a lake, and then the lava flowed back in. And when it flowed back in, it encountered subsurface water. That created an explosion. That created the crater. But it also meant that the whole western lava field here, is covered with impact ejecta. This side is not, because you can see from the different color of the surface there, this is tephra. So the wind was blowing from the west to the east, and the tephra landed over here and buried all the ejector blocks. So we only see them at the surface. There are one or two on the rim there, but we only see them in abundance over here, and they really are in great abundance. So Alex got these mosaics from the PDS 3 mosaics of the surface of Eros. The boulders are really quite easy and numerous to detect. Here's a Mercator projection, and Psyche and Himerus are here. And then, so one of our mosaics is from there. One of our mosaics is in Shoemaker, the Shoemaker crater, and one is on the intercrater plains over here. So there are our mosaics. That's where we took our data for Eros from. And then for the King's Bowl, this was an experience of a lifetime for me, who spent my entire life in the lab. Going out into this field, and we walked up to the crater, and looking down inside the crater was a rush. But then looking out onto the lava field to the west, it just was a great joy. Large numbers of ejecta blocks, ranging in size from about 2 meters, going all the way down to centimeters. And there was just an instinctive thing kicked in at that point where just to get a handle on these ejecta blocks, what I did was to walk to the west with a group of helpers, and then the northwest and the southwest, and then Shannon took a different tack, and she kind of did a raster. But anyway, we found there's no real systematic differences in these data when they're analyzed sensibly. So we ended up just mixing the databases. But that's how we got the data for King's Bowl. First thing we did in the way of checking our results, or looking at our results, was looking at this plot that Galt and Moore derived in the 70s, mostly using lunar data at the time, whereby we compare the largest ejecta block size with the crater diameter. And for a large range, these are tiny particles in at the Ames gun, and then we have White Sands samples there from nuclear impact, nuclear explosions, and then we have lunar data, and then we have lunar craters, lunar orbiter, and Apollo data. King's Bowl sits here, where the ejecta block is 2 meters, and the crater is it's 90 meters in one direction and 30 in the other, so we called it 50. So that plot's right on the line there. You notice there's 2 slopes, smaller objects, smaller craters. The slope has a unit is about unity with the appropriate units, the appropriate form. And then up here it gets a little shallower, and that is presumed to be because of multiple fragmentation of the blocks as they're thrown out. Shoemaker sits up here somewhere, using our 3 fields, using the literature data. We think the maximum block size can be put somewhere in that range. There's some ambiguity with the asteroid data because sometimes you can mistake outcrops for boulders, so we give ourselves a bar there. So I think it's broadly consistent. I don't know whether it plots on this line or this line, but it's broadly consistent with this overall diagram. Okay, next slide. So that gives us heart that maybe we are comparing like with like. We're not doing anything too silly. So now we look at block size as a function of number density. So how many, so a histogram, how many we have of that block size. And it seems to us, given the limitations of the data, that the slopes, that the curves are very, very similar. Here's an equation that fits through the tops of those bars, and there's an R squared, and there's an R squared. So it looks amazingly as it seems. I mean, this is an asteroid, and we're comparing it with a volcanic crater, phreatic crater. And the data look very, very similar when normalized in the appropriate way. We've got meters and centimeters. But then we looked at cumulative frequency distributions. And we have the Eros data over here and the King's Bowl data over here. I haven't got all my statistics on here, but we've got R squareds down here. But again, you got some, as you start your statistics get weak, you start seeing some details that you're not sure about, although there is supposed to be a turn down at this end of the distribution. But anyway, it seems to us, then, that for the bulk of this line and for these data over here, those data are very, very similar. All right. I lied to you when I said this will be short. Okay, here's something else that's kind of cool. This is from Thomas's paper. Most of the ejecta blocks on Eros are actually inside the crater that is presumed to have made them. I didn't mention that, but what is one of the things fascinating, all these blocks look as if they originated from the Shoemaker impact, which was a relatively recent impact. But that is the Thomas conclusion, using mostly a number of simulations. And what we see at King's Bowl, actually, I said there was tons of ejecta blocks on the western side of the fissure. But if you look down inside the crater, there is actually a hole that's going, a cave that's all going the way down. But if you look at the bottom of the crater as best you can, there is a huge pile of undeterminable depth. I suppose the geophysicists might be able to find a way of getting the depth. But there's a large number of ejecta blocks, very large number of ejecta blocks at the bottom. So there's another similarity. It looks like it's the same physics applying, despite the differences in the environment. Here's the distance from the crater, normalized number of blocks. The statistics are not great here. But I suppose I can say by virtue of the statistics being poor, the two results are identical statistically. Can't I say that? All right. No proof that there's any difference. And again here, this is aspect ratios. Aspect ratios, something strange happened at this end of the plot. Sort of equant, if that's the word you can use for blocks. Ejecta blocks are rare are missing at King's Bowl. But if you get above about 1.3 or 4, the curves are the same within our ability to tell. I think what might be going on down here is that what happens a lot at King's Bowl is that there is a layer of lava and the top solidified and the bottom was still fluid, and an impact block went through the crust, and then the lava flowed up through the hole, and it made these beautiful mushrooms, typically a meter in diameter, some bigger, some smaller. Those mushrooms over the years, or as the cooling proceeded, and then over the years, started fragmenting, producing what looks like ejecta blocks, but they are flat by virtue of this stratification process. So we think that's an artifact of the way the lava mushrooms. You're upside down. There you go. Okay. Giving me an incoherent sign that she's holding. All right, so now I begin the major part of my talk. Despite unbelievable differences between the two, well, believable but major differences between the two sites, the properties of the ejecta blocks appear to be very similar. I'll skip that one because it's a detail. Important implications for resource utilizations, exploration of asteroids, and science. I think these data are going to are telling you something about all these things. The present data suggests, now here we are, that we're dealing with strong blocks at Eros. They're basalts, they're basalt blocks. And I'm saying that because of the similarity of these data, okay, the guts of my talk I skipped over. The reason did I just do that again? I did. If you look at for a year of my life while I've been out here at Ames, I was involved in the Planetary Defense Project, where I spent almost a year studying how rocks fragmented, thinking about fragmentation in the atmosphere. And I discovered this reference, which is almost the Bible of mechanical properties of rocks and how they fragment. The cumulative frequency distribution plot depends on the nature of the fragmentation event and the mechanical properties of the precursor rocks. In terms of the physics of how these ejecta blocks were made, the blocks were on Eros and on Idaho were made by what Grady Kipp called an explosive process. The surface on which the precursor rocks were laying was subject to an explosion. So they had the nature of the fragmentation event was the same. That means that the cumulative frequency plot is being determined by the mechanical properties of the precursor rocks. So this is the conclusion that I really want to get to, that from the way the rocks fragmented during the formation event, I suggest the rocks have the same physical properties on Eros that they have at the King's Bowl lava flow. That means, I think, that Eros, when Eros was impacted and produced these ejecta blocks, it was a breakup process very much like we saw at King's Bowl. And that is not inconsistent with what we know about Eros, because there is these structures that go right through Eros that suggest that it is a coherent block. Sorry, I've overran.
We're letting you know, I guess.
You're letting me know, yes. Right. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Derek.